In this video, I'll teach you how to make homemade crispy quinoa vegetable burgers.
I will now cook 1 cup of quinoa. I like mixed quinoa, but you can use any kind you like. The color doesn't matter, it's all your preference. Add a cup of quinoa and rinse well. Rinse the quinoa well and rub it between your fingers to remove the saponins, which are like a soap-like substance on the surface of the quinoa. Final rinse, there should be very little soap bubbles, if at all, and the water should run mostly clear. I add water to about 1 finger joint worth over the quinoa. Cover it and cook on a rice setting in the Instant Pot, but you can also cook this on a stovetop. Here is our cooked quinoa. 1 red bell pepper, a red onion, some green onions if you have it, and potato starch. If you don't have potato starch, you can also use dried potato flakes as a substitute. It just might not stick together quite as well. A little fresh ground pepper if you like, and some seasoned salt. First I chop up the green onions, just like 3 or 4 stems of them. And one helpful hint with green onions is you can actually grow them yourself if the weather is right. You just take the little part of the onion you usually discard and stick it in the dirt, and you'll grow more green onions from that. You won't even have to buy them. Peel and chop the onion. No need to mince it too finely, just enough that it'll mix up into the burger. I've washed and seeded the red pepper, and now I'm going to chop it up into cubes. It's easier to do this if it's already cut in half, and add to the mix. The pepper doesn't have to be cut too fine, just again enough to mix into the mixture. Now that the vegetables are chopped, they're ready to add to the quinoa mixture. And scrape them into the bowl. Next, I add some seasoned salt to the bowl. This is my personal favorite, the Herbamar, but you can also add crazy mixed up salt, any blend you prefer. Add a little bit of both today. Season it to your liking, and add a bit of pepper. Next, I add the potato starch. You can do approximately 4 tablespoons, a little more or less to your liking. When you mix it all together, it should stick to itself pretty well. Next, we can form the burgers into patties. See how nicely the potato starch holds it together. I have a little bowl of water here to wet my fingers in case they get too sticky, and a towel. Now the burgers are formed and ready to be fried. I forgot to add that each one was approximately the size of a golf ball before I flattened it, maybe a really big golf ball, but you can make them to the size you prefer. Aren't they colorful? I'll add a couple of tablespoons of avocado oil. Be careful for the hot pan, and especially be careful working with oil. I know the exact measurements may vary with your pan. I like to use this high-sided pan because that way oil doesn't splat all over the stove, as opposed to using a frying pan. That was about 5 or so. You can see the oil just covers the bottom. And again, be very careful working with hot oil. Keep a close watch on the pan to make sure the oil is the right heat. It should be hot. Just as it begins to smoke, it's time to put in the burgers. If it's smoking too much, turn it down. Carefully lower them in with the spatula to avoid burning yourself. Stand back in case of any hot oil splatters. This is why I also like to use a high-sided pan. It helps prevent oil splatters. Now the burgers are frying. As you can see, they're not overly crowded in there. If they're overly crowded, they might stick together and make it difficult to turn. Keep a close eye on them while they're frying. Let's give this a check. And get a little sticky. Oh, could use a little more time. Now the burgers are ready to turn over. My heat isn't so hot here, so I found it's actually closer to 4 or 5 minutes per side to get a nice golden crispy brown like this. But sometimes it can be a little bit sticky. I don't use non-stick pans, so just got to scrape them a little bit and get all the good bits. Now the burgers are crispy golden brown and ready to be removed. I usually drain them very carefully on the side to get most of the grease off before transferring them to a paper towel lined plate. Be very careful not to get the paper towels too close to the stove, especially if you have an open flame. Amount of oil needs to be added during the frying. It should come up to temperature rather quickly. Just make sure there's enough to at least cover the bottom of the pan. Now I'm frying up the final batch of burgers. Being that these are vegan, you don't need to use a separate spatula because there's no worry about raw egg being on your spatula when lowering them into the oil. Fry the burgers approximately 3 to 5 minutes per side until they're nice and golden brown. This is how they should look. Now the veggie burgers are complete. They're ready to eat with your favorite sauce. We like ketchup in our family and hot sauce, but you can use whatever dipping sauce you like, or even add them to a bun. Enjoy!